Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are excited that so many of you could join us for today's event with Thomas Hübl, entitled Your Path to Renewal. And hello to the many Mystic Café members here with us today. It's wonderful to have you with us. I'm Sherry, your technical host for today's event, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here. A few quick technical announcements before we get started. Closed captions are available in Zoom and will appear by clicking on the CC menu option at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you're joining us on YouTube, the closed caption option is on by default and cannot be turned off. And these are auto-generated captions and will be imperfect. Edited subtitles will be added within a few days. If you have any technical issues or questions, please email our wonderful, beautiful support team at onlinecoursesupport@thomashubl.com. Those of you who are here with us in Zoom today can submit a written question at any time by clicking on the Q&A button found at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you don't see it, click More and you'll find the Q&A button there. And now to get things started, I'm going to turn it over to the lovely Anna Molitor. Anna is one of Thomas's senior students and will be bringing Thomas on momentarily. So over to you, Anna.
Thank you so much, Sherry. And hi, everybody. Welcome to our members and to all of you listening to this webinar with Thomas on the topic of your path to renewal, how to ground your body, calm your mind, and open your heart. We are really happy that you're joining us today, and welcome also if you're listening to the recording afterward. So for those of you who are new to Thomas and his work, here's a brief introduction. Thomas Hübl is a teacher, speaker, founder of the Academy of Inner Science, and author of the book entitled Healing Collective Trauma, a process for integrating our intergenerational and cultural wounds, and the book entitled Attuned, Practicing Interdependence to Heal Our Trauma and Our World. Thomas works within the complexity of systems and cultural change, integrating the core insights of the great wisdom traditions and mysticism with the discoveries of science. For the last 20 years, he has led large-scale events and courses on the healing of collective trauma. The Mystic Café is a membership community where Thomas teaches monthly about mystical principles. And this month in the Mystic Café, we are going to engage in a 7-day reset to more deeply practice how we can nourish our nervous system. We'll tell you more about how to join the Mystic Café and participate in the complete 7-day reset later in this event. But first, we've received over 250 questions about how to reset and restore our nervous system. It's a very popular topic right now. And Thomas will be addressing some of those questions during this event. We might not get to your specific question, but just hoping and trusting that you really find value in the questions being addressed and that you'll find insights and have realizations in this hour together. And with that, I'd like to welcome Thomas.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna.
Yeah.
And welcome, everybody.
Yeah. And then maybe, Thomas, you could just start off with speaking a bit to why grounding and regulating our nervous system comes first before we can really help or have the intention to change the world. What is it that regulating our nervous system gives us first?
Yeah, let's see. Maybe we do one thing. Anyway, I see many entries in the chat. Maybe everybody can write just, if you look at how stressed are you right now on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is very relaxed, 10 is very stressed. So if you write just a number, and let's see what we see. It's very fast. It stresses us even more to read all the numbers, but it's great. So we can see, yes, exactly. We can see because of course we are coming from different activities into this call. So we are different times of the day. Exactly. Okay, and while you're still putting your number in, so if you look at how did you assess your stress level right now? If it, I just say, okay, I feel stress, then I can say, okay, but what do I actually feel when I feel stressed? And we did this just in a class before as well. So when I look at, okay, what are the signs? How do you know that you are stressed? And there are two components to this. One is what do I feel? And some people might feel tension in the body. Some people might feel that the breath becomes more shallow, or we hold our breath, we feel restless, we feel rumination, we feel that our mind's racing all the time, also in the night, and that's why we cannot sleep. And again, some people are writing it. We feel worried, we feel anxious, right, we feel tense. And so there is, first of all, I can practice that I just say many times or multiple times a day, I assess my stress level. And not that I should be relaxed all the time, or like I put myself an ideal there. Just say, okay, I want to create more awareness. So that's step number one. Step number two is, okay, I assess stress and I notice certain symptoms. Many of those have been popped into the chat right now. So we can see what happens in our nervous system and in our body when we feel stressed. And the third question that we can ask is, how do I notice those symptoms? Not only I notice symptoms, I say, okay, how do I notice? And if you take a moment and you say, okay, how do I notice my breathing? How do I notice stress activation? How do I notice tension in my body? How? So not only how stressed I am, what are the symptoms? How do I notice? And that's what I want to start with is, so when I say, how do I notice? I go into, I create some awareness of certain parts of myself to have a faster and faster assessment of my stress. And the same function that helps me to assess my stress level is also the function that helps me to regulate my stress better. And so when we look at our nervous system, we say, okay, we all have been born into a certain family system, into a world, into a global situation, from our genetic and epigenetic tendencies to the global situation of our time. All of that is part of how we live our daily life. And of course, all of that is also part of what kind of maybe trauma or trauma history is part of our ancestors, our own childhood, our interactions every day. And so we can say part of us is integrated. What does it mean, integrated? That the experiences that we had could be integrated, digested, and integrated into a sense of self that is growing, becoming more mature, and is able to respond to the world in a regulated way. What does dysregulated mean? That I am stressed, but I cannot easily downregulate my stress and then be with others, sleep well, recuperate, ground myself. And so there are parts of us that are anyway regulated, and there are other parts that are not. And so today we are saying, wow, we can train and integrate our nervous system so that the flow of different parts of our nervous system in our body become more and more open, so that more and more life situations can be met versus being reacted to. So we all know when we become reactive, we get more and more polarized. So the higher is our escalated stress level, we become more polarized. So we become even more worried. We drop into fight or flight tendencies. We become more aggressive or angry. Or when we are really stressed out, or we were really stressed or hurt in the past, then we become frozen. We become frozen, we become numb, we become disengaged, we kind of shut down or checked out. And all of that is really stressed. So on the one hand, we often call reactivity more the fight and flight version of it because that's more obvious. But being numb, being disengaged, being internally distant is also triggered, but just in another way. And it's not that obvious to us. And that's why we want to say, okay, the practice of our nervous system really matters. Like practicing regulation in our nervous system really matters out of multiple reasons. One is, of course, it is very good for our health and for our mental health. Number one. Second, it's much more pleasant, creative, and productive to be in a more regulated state and meet the challenges from a more resourced and regulated state. We could say resilience is the capacity to stay related to challenges. So it means in my more mature version, which means also in my more regulated version, I can stay related also when it's challenging much longer. It doesn't work all the time because if they're really traumatizing situations, maybe that's not going to work. But we are able to stay connected in more challenging situations more of the time. And that's why also for everybody that is in leadership positions, works with clients, is a parent or a husband, a wife, an intimate partner, we all have situations that are more challenging, and training and integrating our nervous system is an absolute win-win-win for ourselves, for our relationships, for the society. So that's why our nervous system state really matters. And it doesn't only just matter for us, for ourselves, it also matters for the people around us. Because if your inner state is more grounded and regulated, then everybody who is connecting to you, everybody who is relating to you, everybody in your ecosystem will get a more grounded transmission of your nervous system, because our nervous systems speak anyway, no matter if we are aware of it or not. Our nervous systems transmit information all the time. If that information comes more open, more relaxed, more grounded, it invites everybody else into a similar state. That's why I often say the stress goes viral in already stressed nervous systems, but presence goes viral. What does that mean? Stress goes viral when many people carry latent stress in their nervous system. When somebody is really stressed, it activates that stress like a wildfire. But if somebody is very regulated, even if other people get stressed, the tendency is at least, or the probability is much higher that stress can ground itself. That's why our nervous system is like a lightning rod on the house. You know, when the lightning hits the house, the lightning rod takes the electricity immediately into the ground and doesn't burn your house. The same is with presence. Presence can ground stress, even if the environment is very stressed and there are some present people in the room, it grounds the stress and turns it into soil. It grounds the stress and turns it into soil, which means we can digest it. We can integrate the stress and it becomes soil, which means ground, which means a healthy connection to the land, which means generosity, openness, open-heartedness, warmth. So grounding really matters, not only because we are more connected to our body, also for everybody who does inner work or inner self-reflection work or any kind of therapeutic or coaching or any kind of work, we need to be in a certain state to really reflect and digest. What is trauma healing? Is digesting undigested material. What is individual or personal development? Is transforming parts of the past into a new future. All of that needs a certain state. We all know that when we feel more grounded and relaxed, we digest better, like our bodies can self-heal themselves better. But we are also part of a much wider ecosystemic healing mechanism. We are able to listen to people deeper. Listening makes meaningful conversations. Regulation helps other people to regulate themselves. So when somebody's really stressed and you're regulated, your nervous system is a great asset to take that stress down, to open up new functions in the brain that are much better equipped to solve challenges and to solve them. And then there are some people that say, oh, because we have to also note that most probably many of us grew up, at least partly, in family systems, schooling systems, and in societies where stress is, and not only healthy creative stress, also toxic stress, is part of our everyday life. That's why we normalized a certain dimension of stress, becomes normal. This we say, okay, this is how life is. And I would say, no, 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 no. This is how life is when it's partly hurt. So the systemic stress that has been normalized is not normal. That's not how life is. That's how life is when it's partly hurt. And so when we heal, and also when we collectively heal, we transcend in a way one notion of life and see, wow, there are other options of living that are less stressed, but they are not less motivated to engage. Because some people are kind of worried that when their stress gets more regulated, they will not be productive anymore. They will not stand up for any kind of justice in the world. They will not stand in if we need to stand in and correct things that are going wrong in the world. We are not, that equation is a function of normalizing a certain level of stress, a certain level of reactivity that then we call action. But if we are, it's like the fuel from power, thousands of years of power over hierarchies created a world in us, and we carry this in our genes, we carry this in our education, we carry this in many parts of the society, that either the current effects or the after effects of strong power over hierarchies made fear a driver to act. But same as we change the fuel system, more or less, in the world to a different alternative fuel options, the motivation of creativity is way more powerful than the motivation of fear. But fear is much more existential. Creativity is based on true soul motivation, is what I really want to, not what I should contribute, what I want to contribute. And that's very different. It's not, should I behave like this? Should I do this ethically? Should I live this? Should I go out on the street and go to a demonstration? No, it's not a should. It's I choose. I choose because I feel it's right. And so the myth that just fear motivates us or stress motivates us to be active in the world, I think is something we really have to look at. That from a more grounded, more mature place, we can maybe be even more productive, because the productivity comes from a different fuel source that is much more connected to something that's essential. And that's our contribution to the world. And it's also more generous, and it's less prone to create crisis all the time. And that's why I think an individual and a collective practice to change the imprints. These are often thousands of years of going through recurrent collective traumatizations, to go through all kinds of wars, through all kinds of collective wounds that create a lot of stress, and then they reverberate in family systems for generations. Like after it seems like in certain areas we reached peace agreements, the war is not over. It just reverberates through the family systems. It needs a much deeper peace to create peace, really, that is sustainable. And so we experience the after effects more or less. It depends, of course, on our individual life story, but there's a collective dimension and also a collective agreement around stress and dysregulation, and being triggered and being in our fight flight modes or freeze modes. And so grounding that more and more is actually a strong social change process. It's an individual process, it's a family process, but it's also a social change contribution. And therefore, I think the more we learn about the function of our nervous system, the functions, and also the capacity that we can, through train and integrate, we can literally learn to reset, to detox. And it's a process. It's not a quick fix, but where does this idea come from that it should be a quick fix? It's a practice, like a craft. And if you put the energy into that craft, it changes our inner state, and that inner state becomes more stable and regulated. And we can see that, because even if, for example, some people really have high profile jobs, we work a lot, it is not about how much time we put into our work, it's the state from which we work that matters. It's not if we work a lot, then that's good or bad. It's like that the state from which we work a lot matters for our health, matters for the way we sleep, and how we recharge our bodies, how we recharge our batteries. And so stress can be very needed, and creative stress is needed, and will happen, and is also good, as long as we can regulate it. And that regulation is a capacity. And for some of us, we grew up in very regulated circumstances, and so that helps us very much to stay more regulated. But if it's not that way, we can learn and integrate so that we can come to a more regulated place. And that's a gift for ourselves, and that's a gift for everybody around us, because that creates much more meaningful and deep and lasting relationships. That creates an ecosystem that is more regulated. And I think if millions of people create an ecosystem that is more regulated, we also have a much higher capacity to solve for many of the issues that we see right now globally. And that's why it starts with a practice, and it starts also with a collective practice. And that's why we are coming together also to explore the power of regulation, and also the beauty of, like, that regulation brings joy, regulation brings presence, regulation brings the capacity to enjoy. How can you enjoy something beautiful? It can be an art piece, a sunset, a good meal, a good conversation, when internally you're running. we will have much less joy, or we need to numb ourselves or self-medicate ourselves with all kinds of stuff to be able to be somewhere, because if we don't do it, we are just running internally. Even if we sit with people, we constantly think about other things, we cannot fully listen, we are distracted, we can't really sleep well because we wake up and we think. So all of that are symptoms that we can work on, and we have tools to step by step ground. And a very important also is that even if we are stressed, it's not something that's good or bad, it's something that needs more awareness, attention, and we have the capacity to change. Because if I start thinking, oh, I shouldn't be stressed, then I'm putting my stress into the off and the out, and it becomes less and less reachable for me to regulate. And the self-assessment before shows that we pretty quickly have a sense, and the part of us that can sense how stressed we are is the part that has access to become more and more regulation, so that we can feel stress activation and relaxation. And the beauty is, whenever we want to meditate, whenever we want to work on ourselves, whenever we sit with a client, whenever we are a parent with our children, the state of our nervous system is an asset. Whenever we run a team or run an organization, the state of our nervous system is an asset and will create an atmosphere. And I think same as we enjoy when somebody really listens and feels us, other people do the same when we are relating to them. So I think that's a great asset to provide, besides all the skills and all the other intelligence that we all bring into the space. I think that's why I think it's good to think about it a bit different. It's not just a self-centered practice. It's a practice for myself that immediately has an ecosystemic design aspect. Through co-regulation, like self-regulation turns in every interaction that we have, where we are regulated, we become a co-regulative factor. So immediately my inner state will design the ecosystem that I create around myself. So it becomes the atmosphere of my ecosystem. And it becomes the atmosphere of my family. It becomes the atmosphere in which my children grow up in. It becomes the atmosphere how we live intimate relationship. So that's why our inner state is key to how we design our ecosystem, and our ecosystem is the closest version to the world that we want to live in. That's also important. If we have great ideas how to change the world, let's be able to change to express or to co-create the ecosystem that represents the world that we want to see on the bigger scale. And if we can create it around us, so we are able to create it also on a bigger scale. Otherwise, it's a good idea, but it's not embodied. It's not, I can't live it by myself. So I would like it, but between I would like it and my life is my practice and my healing work. Well, Anna, I know there are so many, this is just a short introduction. Of course, there's so much more to say. There's so much more to say, but maybe we want to respond to, there are so many questions that came in.
Yeah. And maybe we can also just take a moment. I'm seeing in the chat and just feeling just what you just transmitted to us, and also how I'm just feeling the regulation and joy that we are within as you're teaching. I feel it in myself, and I really felt it coming through the community as well, that everything you're speaking about is also happening here. And I feel the joy of the community also in just noticing what's happening for us as we're listening to you, and how your practices are also now doing exactly what you say, transmitting in to the space right now.
Mm.
And you just said so many beautiful things that I saw many of us really excited about, that you're really speaking to how being less stressed is not less motivated to engage. And that this piece you just said, so many pieces you said about how these generations of power over hierarchies created a world in us, in our nervous systems. It's not just our personal life. And that I saw a lot of resonance with that fear has become a strong driver for change, but that we can be, the motivation of creativity is much more powerful than the motivation of fear. So I felt a lot of sparking going off in the community with that. And I just want to really appreciate what you just brought in about that, how our
Yes.
inner state creates an ecosystem. Yeah.
Yes, and I just saw also in the chat that somebody said it stresses me to be perfect, like perfectly regulated, and that's a very good reminder that we are not talking about being perfectly regulated. I think we all know that life is messy, and it's not about not the absence of any kind of stress or the any absence of any kind of dysregulation. It's step by step increasing the probability of being regulated, but regulated doesn't mean being perfect. That's very important. It's just that I am in a higher capacity to respond to the world from a mature place. But it doesn't mean that that when I get stressed or when I have a lot of things to do and there's stress coming up, that shouldn't happen. That we should always be kind of in the same inner state. It has fluctuations, and it's great because that makes us alive and that makes us a human being. We are just talking about that dysregulation that is hard for us to regulate and to come back to a state of openness and connectivity. And so that's important because we might have this ideal in our minds that we need to get to like an ideal state versus having more and more awareness of the state that is, and that is already regulating. And that we also create communities where we remind ourselves of that, and that it becomes like a collective competence, not just an individual competence, but it becomes the competence of organizations to be more regulated, and family systems and schools and hospitals, and like organizations and spaces become more regulated, so they become healthier. And I think but it's not, we are not aiming for a perfect state. So thank you for writing this, because I think that might be on the mind of many people. Yeah.
I saw that too, and it really popped out that also it's that kindness, and part of the regulation is kindness when we're not, is being warm towards ourselves when we're not regulated, which yeah. So thank you so much, and such a high level exploration of it. And I want to bring in some questions from the community that are more like also in some precise areas. So there's one from Aida, and I might be pronouncing your name wrong, but who asks, how to recognize specifically the difference between being regulated and being numb?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question, because sometimes we might mix up regulation and numbness. Also, for many people that meditate, like sometimes we pop into numb states, and they look like calmer, but they're actually not calm, but they're a bit disconnected. And so that's important to recognize, also especially in a meditation practice, but also in daily life. And I can notice when I'm numb, when it's harder for me to feel my body, or when I cannot tell what emotion I'm feeling. So when we ask each other, or when we ask ourselves, so what's my emotional state now? I can say, oh, I feel a little bit of joy, or I feel a little bit anxious, or I feel a little bit sad, or I feel a little bit of love, or whatever. Even if it's not strong emotions, when we feel, we can feel. But if I need to search for the emotion, yeah, maybe. Then I know that I'm not fully connected to my emotional experience. Or when it's harder for me to feel my body or parts of my body, then I notice, when I need to search for perception, I already notice a bit the absence of perception. Because let's let's see, this is so beautiful, like information. It's our nervous system is like is a flow of energy the whole time. It's a flow of data. So in form, when I look at Anna, Anna informs me. I have a form of Anna in my central nervous system, which also means that if I'm much more tight and activated and stressed, then Anna doesn't go in very much into Thomas. So then I process Anna more intellectually, maybe. I can be in a ping pong conversation with Anna about who is right or who is wrong, but it doesn't go much in. So Anna doesn't inform Thomas, which means Thomas cannot have a real form of Anna in Thomas, which means I don't feel her really. But when my nervous system is more open and grounded, Anna can land in Thomas, which means my body feels Anna's body. My body can tell her stress level, her level of tension, and even much more. So when the information goes in and we are grounded, we feel each other much deeper, physically, emotionally, mentally, relationally, maybe spiritually, ancestrally, so many dimensions where when the nervous system is open, it's like a great data flow. That's why we say when it's open, we feel like it's a flow, and life is a flow. When we contract and become tight, then we say, oh, the flow breaks, or we don't feel in the flow. And that's why numbness I notice when I stop feeling myself and information cannot go in, which means I stop feeling other people. And in my social awareness, I might not notice when I talk to people that they feel numb inside. But when I'm open, I can feel that immediately. If somebody doesn't feel him, her, themselves, I notice that. So then in the conversation, I take a short break before I say the next thing, like a second or so. I take a breath. I regulate. I feel myself. So it gives the person a moment to ground themselves even more consciously or unconsciously. And when we feel somebody that doesn't feel him or herself, then it creates an extra resource. So there are many things that happen in regulation because I have more options. The more stressed I become, my options shrink. And so that's why the word information is so beautiful, because deep relationships are deeply informed. And then it's sensing, because I need my body to sense, because if I'm too stressed, I'm just my mind. But if my body is open, then I can sense and think. I use my cognition, my sensing, and then it's sense making. It makes sense. What Anna tells me through her body and what she tells me through her mind, when it's congruent or authentic, I feel it. And when it's not congruent, I also feel. And we notice that we're all very sensitive. So we notice when somebody says A, but actually means B. In the body, there's B. In the mind, there's A. It's not fully congruent. That's why authenticity or trustworthiness or congruency, to be real, is that the information is congruent. And when we are more regulated, we notice these things much, much more, and we can respond to them. We can be more generous in these moments. We also feel more grounded and strong in these moments to just be there. But it's not the strength that is armored. It's a strength that comes from the ground, comes from Mother Earth, is here. It's a strength of presence, not of harshness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I notice as you're speaking that it really shows that a more regulated nervous system, the world becomes bigger inside, and that it's so possible to care for the world in almost in an effortless way, not in a doing, like you're saying, not in this kind of efforting, but simply because that happens when our nervous systems are more open and flowing. We're naturally in connection, and we're just caring for life in a different way. And it feels really beautiful when you speak.
Right. Yeah, because otherwise we stay, and then we often project it onto the world. Oh, because the world is like this, I also need to be like that. But that's not true. That's a projection of my stress onto the world. So it's much more powerful to not be in the same state and to have more options and to bring innovation in than to do the same that we did 100 years ago again, or that is a pattern in my family and reproduce it again. So, but for this, we need a practice. And that's where inner healing work, integration work, nervous system regulation practices, meditative and contemplative practices bring a different quality, but it's not less strong or less impactful. It's more impactful because it's more fluid and it's not so tight. And that, I think, is really beautiful. So sorry, but that's lovely.
That's great. And let's see, we have time for maybe one or two more questions here. There's so many great ones coming in. I'm glad that we're opening up this challenge to be able to practice together in it. John asks, why do I resist the exercises? I think many of us know this: body awareness, tuning into my feelings when I know it's necessary, healing, and good. And because we can get in this conflict with ourselves, and then we're just putting more pressure. So if you could speak to that, why do I resist it?
That's really cool. Let's unpack this question, because this question is really important for many of us. Because as we all know, it's like, it's not just, oh, now we found a practice and from that day on we did it and life just was great. No, like we get a practice and then we start practicing it and we have a resistance to practice, then we forget to practice and we remind ourselves again, or somebody reminds us, or then we suffer and then we come back to, oh, I need to do something. So there is a path, and it's based also on, like, when my nervous system relaxes, what happens? I have more space inside. I feel more grounded. That's why stress goes up and out, relaxation goes in and down. I become more grounded. It's like, it feels like the soil. That's why I said before, this power, this fluid power, comes from Mother Earth. It comes from the ground. It's deeply connected to the ground. And that has a strong power, but it's not a hard power. It's a fluid power. And when I relax, it feels to me like, oh, I feel my body more. When I feel my body sensations more, then I feel closer to the ground. Maybe I can feel the soil, the land that I'm on. And so my body is breathing into the ground. And so when that happens, it's also that exhaling is inducing digestion. So exhaling means reflect. I have more space. I can think about my life. I can feel my life. I can have perspective onto things, on new projects or projects that I do. Like, I have the capacity to look at my life. When I'm too stressed, life is like it's closing in on me. It's like I am dead. Versus, oh, I can look. I have space. And then when I reflect, I can digest. I begin to digest. So stuff is coming up. The nervous system wants to let go of the things that it couldn't let go because it was too stressful. And that's physically true, but that's also emotionally and psychologically true. The unintegrated experiences, and of course the extreme version of it is trauma, is an unintegrated, frozen experience in time and space. So when we relax more, the self-healing mechanism starts to work, but it also means detoxing. And so sometimes when we want to practice, there's one dimension of it, is that when I relax, I might become aware of how stressed I am. And then I become for some time a bit more restless. And this sometime can be 2 minutes. This can be also longer, that I feel, wow, I'm actually very stressed. So then often we engage in behaviors, then we read more news, we do more things, we are more on social media, we are watching some movies that actually keep us in that stress, at that stress level. So not to relax, because from a certain level of stress, relaxing is painful, at least for some time, until it regulates itself. So we need to know that. And that's also the vicious cycle of being in a high level of chronic stress, that when we relax, it's not comfortable. That's why we keep ourselves busy. But once we go through that and we come back down into a more regulated state, it's actually much more pleasant to be there because there's pleasure and there's joy and there's presence. So one level is the mere effect of chronic stress that is might be uncomfortable or activation. But the other side is when we begin to relax, we might feel the emotions that we suppressed for some time. So we might get really sad, or we might start to feel more fear, or we might start to feel more anger, or whatever we suppressed for a long time starts to come out. It's like a system that was tight. And if it becomes softer and more open, then many things start to come out. And then we think, oh, wow, this is too much. But if we do it step by step, we can help our nervous systems and bodies to detox some of the material that it keeps inside. And of course, like when I ask you now what happens, what is your freezer doing? Most probably it's freezing your food. And who pays the bill? Most probably you, if it's your freezer. So the electricity bill for the freezing is going down from your bank account every month. And did you think about your freezer before I ask you? Most probably not. So the same is true for trauma or for the stuff that we keep bottled up or that we keep frozen. We invest life energy to keep it frozen. So imagine you invest life energy to keep it frozen. There's life energy frozen, and in that frozen part, there's intelligence that is not contributing to life or to your life or to creation or to projects or whatever is fun for us. So there's a lot of energy. When we release it, we stop paying the electricity bill, we get energy back, and we have much more energy available for new things that we want to create, and we feel more grounded. So that kind of detoxing that we also call healing work or integration work, or that simply comes up when we relax more, is a gift. We just need to learn to do it, some of it at least, in a titrated way, that it's not too overwhelming, but the nervous system wants to open up. And sometimes, especially also in the meditation practice, people practice, and then before something more significant comes up, there's like a bit of a meditation crisis. There's like, oh, I don't want to meditate. I'm restless. I'm thinking it's not good. Maybe I should do something else. Maybe that's not for me. I start doubting my practice because it gets me closer to something that wants to come into my conscious awareness, because of course many of the things I said before, they are not in our conscious awareness. And then maybe the last thing is also, I have seen thousands of people throughout this time, in the last 25 years, that when we begin to do inner work, the stress that we can assess, which means the stress that we consciously feel, is only a part of the stress that is usually in our bodies. Which means, like, part of the stress that we feel in daily life is kind of on the stage. But there's another chunk of stress that is backstage, which means unconscious, that we don't even feel. And once we start opening, like becoming more aware, means to enlarge the stage. So if I become more aware of life, I will become more aware of the content that I wasn't aware of, or the anesthetized content, when suddenly the anesthesia fades away. So of course, more things will come up. Becoming more aware is becoming more aware of something, individually, ancestrally, collectively, spiritually. And so more of life will show up in my awareness. And that means, so when we talk about stress and regulation, there's the part that I feel that I can assess. And then there's the part that I don't feel, but it has effects in my life. And it has effects down the road, maybe in my body, because even if it's unconscious, my body needs to manage that stress like the freezer. And we are paying life energy dollars or euros or yen or whatever. We are paying money, life chi money, for the stuff that stays frozen. And that life energy we don't have available, it's like bound. And we want to bring that back into our life, into our society, into participation, into love, compassion, presence, all the things that we would love in our world, to become a fair, just, open world.
Beautiful, Thomas. Thank you so much. Yeah, so much to say about it, but given the time, I'm just going to shift here. And also wanted to acknowledge we've had a lot of questions coming in about people asking for, as like Kasia asks, is there a technique or tool that would help to regulate quickly, for example, during working time at the office? Or Jess asks, are there quick experiential practices you can give us to help regulate our nervous system in the moment? And just to say, you'll get some practices in the challenge, and that's why we designed it. So even though we don't have time right now to go through that kind of a practice, you will have a lot more coming up in the challenge. And one thing, Thomas, that we wanted to just briefly touch on is, what's the importance of practicing and participating in a collective space in this kind of regulation? Because there's a whole other dimension of nervous system regulation that's really not about just solo processing, right, and regulating. So maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, it's like we said it a bit at the beginning, how even now when we sit here and we are like a community from people all around the world, and if we just connect for this hour and we connect to ourselves, we listen to the content, but also we are part of a community. If the whole community space gets more regulated, and even if we were to practice some regulation practices during that time, then our collective stress level goes down, which affects us. Even if it looks like we can't see each other, but we're becoming a field, we're becoming a kind of a virtual community, and we affect each other. And of course, that's even more powerful if we're a team, if we're an organization, or if we are a family system that does that. And so the practicing community is always an enhancing factor, and we can learn from communities. And I've seen so many groups over the time, like when we are in that collective space, and of course when we are in person in a collective space, it's even much stronger. But that the collective space has such an enormous power, and I think is a totally undervalued healing resource in our society. I think that we need to work much more with collective rituals and groups, and bring all kinds of one-on-one work into much more collective spaces. Because it's such a strong power, and we know this, for thousands of years, people came together and they meditated together, they practiced together. Like, we are not the first ones doing this, and so like it has a reason why people feel like when we do this together, we support each other and we co-regulate each other as we do that. So that's a powerful argument for. There's so many powerful arguments why healing collectives are much more powerful than trying things too much alone and on our own.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think we're living right now in this moment together in an example of that it's so lovely to receive your teaching. At the same time, I'm seeing the chat and feeling the energy of the group. And right now we're, a couple thousand people having an hour together, and that ripple effect just from these moments together is going out into the world. And it's really, really exciting and warm and alive. And I can really feel the community right now. Thank you so much, Thomas, for this. And yeah, and just seeing you all in the chat, appreciating seeing some of you who practice a lot with us and some of you who might be new, and just really warmly inviting you to come explore what we do here in the Mystic Cafe for those of you who might be new to it. And for those of you who practice always with us, yeah, we're happy to see you here too, and to continue our deepening together in this power of our collective building of a deeper ground in our nervous systems together. And yeah, so, and Sherry, maybe you can come back and give us some more details about how to join the Mystic Cafe and participate in the reset. And everybody just like to continue to drink in what's here today with us, what's happening, what's changed in your body and your nervous system. And yeah, I feel the joy of that. And thank you, Sherry, for giving us the details and transitioning into how we can continue this together.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you both so much, Anna and Thomas. I'm excited to share the details. So if you are interested in joining us, you can hop over to mysticcafeonline.com to get all of this info. The 7-day reset will begin with a 90-minute live opening event with Thomas on Sunday, February 16th at 11:30 a.m. LA, 2:30 p.m. New York, and 8:30 p.m. Berlin. The 7-day reset is only available to members of the Mystic Café. So if you'd like to become a member, there are 2 ways to do so. You can sign up for the monthly membership program for $37, or sign up and save with the annual plan, which equates to getting 2 months for free. Once you're a member, you'll enjoy live 90-minute sessions with Thomas every month, live monthly member gatherings hosted by Anna. Plus, you'll have access to a rich library of recordings from Thomas, including a year's worth of past Mystic Cafe sessions that are only available to members. And of course, you'll be able to join Thomas and our worldwide community of members for the new 7-day reset, Nourishing Your Nervous System, which is your bonus to keep when you register. So if that interests you, we warmly invite you to join us for the Mystic Cafe and the new 7-day reset. You can get all the details and sign up at mysticcafeonline.com. And we're putting that link into the chat for you now. If you're already a member of the Mystic Cafe, we'll start the new 7-day reset at our next session on Sunday, February 16th. Please watch your email for details to join us. And I'd like to thank everyone for listening and participating through your presence. And again, we'd love to have you join us in the Mystic Cafe. So Thomas, I'll just check back in with you to see if there's anything else you'd like to share.
Oh, thank you, Anna, and thank you, Sherry. No, I think it was, we touched in, and I think we, as a community, we explored and we felt like a space together. So this was really beautiful. And thank you, everybody, for coming here, joining us, and giving your rich comments here also in the chat. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we'll see all of you again soon. Thank you so much for being here today, and bye for now.